All right, this is going to be a look, a little bit more serious look at Todd Monken's offense based upon almost 200 plays that I watched from, or that I charted from his time at Georgia with the Browns and with Tampa Bay in the NFL. Actually, it's only 174 plays that I charted. Probably watched 3 times that in terms of overall plays to just let the film run and confirm the thoughts that I had or solidify, the thoughts and ideas that I had put down on paper. If you're in my Discord or Patreon, you've already, seen a lot of these observations to be real. This is going to be somewhat data oriented. I will not show a ton of data. I will show film. I'll show observations based on the data. I have the data written up in front of me. Maybe I could type it up and post it in the description or share a document or something. I charted 70 plays from Georgia in 2021 and 22. Charted 87 plays from the Browns in 2019 and charted 27 plays from Tampa Bay in 2018. Pretty similar data, to be honest with you. 11 personnel is a heavy pass grouping. A lot of screens, a lot of draws, particularly at Georgia. A lot of RPOs with Cleveland and Georgia. Less so with Tampa Bay. I think he caters his play calling. He caters his attack to his personnel, which just makes sense. He doesn't force people to fit into his system, I guess. His system is adaptable and multiple. This hopefully will be a little bit more well, I know it was a more exhaustive study to produce. This one took me all week to produce in terms of comparing it to the other Todd Monken film study video that I put out, I think, Tuesday or Wednesday, where I basically just let film run and then talked about my observations from watching the film. This is more so I went back and charted data, charted plays, runs a lot of trick plays, and his players execute them well. That's one thing that's different with the Ravens offense of the last 3 or 4 years. We didn't run any, and when we did, we didn't run them well. It was quite obvious that they were thrown in that week, in fact. So this is, like I said, this is an exhaustive study from the standpoint of what it took me to, the effort it took me to produce it. To be honest with you, it was not sure if the juice is worth a squeeze for real. But the data is all compiled from, again, Georgia, Cleveland, Tampa Bay. You see 61 run, 113 pass. I think that's a little skewed. It looks very pass, heavy, obviously. I think it's a little skewed because I had a film of George Pickens, Cook, the running back for Georgia, and a couple of other guys, one of the tight ends, that was more so oriented towards the pass. The film that I was given, when that player's not on the field, they don't show you that play. That's the way you acquire college all-22 film. So I suspect that the run-pass percentage is going to be a little closer to 43, 44% run, 56, 57% pass, somewhere in that area, maybe 45, 55 run to pass. But it's definitely going to be more pass than run under Todd Monken, and that's a huge switch, right, based on what we've seen in Baltimore since 2019. There will be some film intermittently shown here. Observations from watching the film. There are many, and some of which I touched on in the first video that I ran through. It was about 12 or 14 minutes long. First one, the fullback is non-existent. So when I say that, I mean there is none. Now, that doesn't mean that Pat Ricard is gone. It just means that in all 3 stops, he's not used a fullback. There's been a fullback of the 174 plays I charted and the probably, like I said, 300, 400 more that I watched but didn't chart. You're just sitting there eating your dinner, watching the screen, watching the plays, and letting your brain, hopefully solidify the conclusions you've come to or find some anomalies. I saw 5 instances of someone lined up in the backfield as a fullback out of, again, the 174 plays I charted and probably another 300, 350, 400 plays. So 670, 700 plays, something like that. 5 times there was a player in the backfield with the tailback. This is a one-back offense. This just is. And in fact, the one time I did see an actual fullback in the backfield was Tampa Bay, and I think I'll show you that play in a moment. The rest of the time it's 12 personnel, and he's doing what everybody else does in the NFL and college these days, which is use a tight end in the backfield. So 12 personnel can be a tight end in the backfield playing fullback. Now, that's not the case here. Again, this film from 2018, so you're not getting up-to-date film here from the standpoint of when he has someone playing fullback. At Georgia, it was a tight end. I'm not going to show you that film because I'm not going to show College All 22 film and risk my channel. I don't know how other people do it, but more power to them. It's a one-back offense, plain and simple. Film from 2019. When you do get a tight end, or when you do get a fullback in the backfield, like I said, it's a tight end. So this is 11 personnel, excuse me. So you still got 3 receivers out here. And now the tight end is lined up in the backfield. So for the Ravens in 2023, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, Charlie Kolar, those guys don't seem suited to doing this. But look, you're not talking about block when you're running lead zone, because they're generally running zone. When you're running lead zone, it's not like, this guy's asked to read it. He's not just going to run into the back of his tackle he kind of does in a couple of these plays that I've seen. But lead zone is he's leading to the play, and he's just inserting and creating an extra gap, giving the running back another read, giving the linebackers another read to cut off of. In this case, you can see, I think this is Jefferson. I think it's TJ. I could be wrong. Going out wide on the track with the tight end, and allows Chubb to cut it back in. He's kind of got to respect this. He's got to respect this tight end / fullback path, and in this case doesn't work out in his favor. It's a one-back offense, guys. When I say 3 out of 3, that means at Georgia, in Cleveland, and in Tampa Bay is a one-back offense, period. 5 times where they had a fullback in the backfield out of all the plays that I watched since the hire was announced. Couple of film examples here of one-back stuff. As Ravens fans, it might trigger us a little bit, to be honest with you, because some of it is not complimentary of our defense in 2019, at least at the beginning of the season. Now, one thing I want to note here, I'll try to rewind this back a little bit without rewinding too far, because this is one continuous video file. And I'm going to mention this a couple of times in this video, guys. I think he sets people up, and I think that now I know Freddie Kitchens was a head coach here in 2019, and there's people who've come on Twitter and tried to correct me or check me. Freddie Kitchens called the plays and didn't listen to anybody else. Well, he's the damn offensive coordinator. He's getting paid to do something. He wasn't getting paid to just sit there and write things down and chart plays for Freddie Kitchens. So he had an impact somehow. The offensive data is consistent with what I see at Georgia, except for Georgia throws more screens, more RPOs, and a little bit more trick plays too. And I will mention trick plays here in a little while. The data is consistent enough for me to recognize that he either A, had a large influence, a large impact, or B, that helped shape / mold his play calling at Georgia. It was an influence on who he is now in 2023. I just don't look at it as this static situation. Freddie Kitchens called the plays and didn't listen to a damn thing Todd Monken said. I just don't see it that way. I don't think that's the dynamic with Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy in Kansas City. Do you? But some of those same people who give Eric Bieniemy credit give none to Todd Monken. It's interesting. I think both of those guys had a huge impact, and both of those guys were influenced and had impact and influence in those situations. All right, so let's talk about what I mean when I say that I think he sets people up. I think you got 13 personnel here. That's actually a receiver, so this is 12, sorry. And you got 2 tight ends down here. So they brought the receiver in, and then they're running some kind of off-tackle scheme down here to the boundary. Essentially, it looks like buck sweep to a lot of us who know a little bit about the wing T and have experience defending it or running it. Down here to the offense's left, defense's right. Later on goes 11 personnel. So it skews one of the tight ends, but still gets that second player over here by running a receiver in motion. Watch the scheme. Watch the backfield action. Watch the timing. Pretty similar. They're not pulling 2 guards. They're pulling 1. My point is he can utilize 12 personnel, 11 personnel, probably 21, to attack people with the same concept, but from different personnel groups if he sees a weakness in what you're running. I like what I see. I certainly thought that offense in Cleveland 2019 and 2020, obviously, and 21 was a pain in the butt to try to defend. And I'm excited to see what he brings into the fold. Generally, zone scheme stuff, sometimes you'll see pin pull. So you'll see calls where they're pinning people down and pulling someone. Still can be considered zone, even though it's a gap scheme look. This is a pin and pull, if you ask me, whereby they see better angles to execute it. That's just giving the offensive line the opportunity to communicate like that, and I think it's just smart coaching. A lot of tight end into the boundary out of 11 personnel, run stuff into the boundary. He's going to threaten into the boundary more than we have, I would say, in the last couple of years. And when I say into the boundary, this is not necessarily into the boundary here. The ball certainly is in the middle of the field, but a lot of times you're getting the tight end and X receiver into the boundary, your best receiver, your best one-on-one guy, because you're getting the nickel defender to the field over the twins. That's one of the benefits of putting the tight end into the boundary. Sometimes you'll see him put the running back into the boundary with the tight end. Again, I understand that this is not the tight end into the boundary here now. The ball is certainly in the middle of the field. Just an example of the type of run schemes that you'll see from his offense if it remains consistent. 12 personnel against the Rams 2019, I think week 1, maybe week 2. One-back offense. Whether it's run or pass, it's a one-back offense, and that is going to be a huge adjustment for us as Ravens fans to watch, to comprehend. He'll be able to move the ball with the run in one back, move the ball with the pass in one back. We won't be so predictable when we have a fullback back there. Now, is Pat Ricard going to be on the team? Yeah, I would surmise. Is he going to be out there as much? No, I don't think so. I think we're going to see more of the looks that I just showed you here with one running back on the field. The 11 personnel data that I have, I don't pretend is the end-all, be-all. This is not a summative statement by me at all. I recognize that only charting 174 plays, only watching 600-something, 700-something is not exhaustive in terms of representing a large percentage of the plays that he's called or been a part of calling and scheming and organizing and creating. Having said that, 11 personnel data is crazy. At Georgia, the 11 personnel data was 3 runs, 13 pass. With the Browns, the 11 personnel data was 22 runs, 45 passes. And with Tampa Bay, the 11 personnel data, you can probably hear me flipping through my pages, was 5 runs and 9 passes, so a little bit more balanced. You're basically talking about 33% run, 66% pass in 11 personnel across the 3 locations that I had film of. I feel like that's significant. Going to use a lot of RPOs, a lot of screens. I'll show some of them to you here. The Browns were a very underrated screen team. 2019, 2020, very underrated. Dangerous element to their offense, whether they had Kareem Hunt, where they had Chubb back there. I think you're going to see a backup, another player here. The RPOs generally are going to be to the side of the back, like that one you see there. You'll get the end zone angle here in a moment. It's a short gain. RPOs is basically just a substitute for the run game in a lot of ways. You're getting people out of the box, forcing them to defend the width of the field. I think he is going to do that way better than we have in the past couple of years. And when I say the width of the field, the Ravens generally, the better teams that we've faced on defense, have played softer coverages where you have a corner, a safety at, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 yards off. Their pattern reading, maybe you have a nickel defender. And we had areas of the field short that the defense wants you to throw the ball there. Make no mistake. They want you to throw the ball there so they can rally at angles and have a numbers advantage. Force defender, inside-out defender, alley defender. Essentially, it's outside run. That's all it is. We still didn't take advantage of it, threatened enough to then be able to utilize, double moves, even though Rashad Bateman hit one against Miami in 2021. Demarcus Robinson hit one against the Bengals this year. I'm talking about teams that played some of that read stuff. Even the Dolphins version of Sticks Blitz Zero was a read where the corner safeties are reading Lamar Jackson and they're breaking on his first movement as soon as he starts to pull the pin on the grenade. My point is, by attacking horizontally, I think Todd Monken is going to change some of the coverages that we're going to see. I'm trying to show you film of that here. When he finds something that's working, he's going to stay with it. Now this is not an RPO in totality for real, but you still have all the necessary elements of it. You have the tight end, the running back on the same side with a third receiver, third eligible receiver, running back cross and face, a little bit of mesh here, an in cut, and then an in cut on 3rd and 5. Why do I show you this? These are concepts that he expects his quarterback and other players to be able to execute. You can see the eyes are here. I mean, he's definitely reading something. And then he comes back to the outside receiver on the catch. And by the way, that was ruled a catch to confirm or convert the third down. Some of the RPOs are pre-snap. You got a bunch configuration to one side. He really likes bunch across all three places, particularly at Georgia. Bunch right was his formation in the past couple of years. Some of the RPOs might be pre-snap counts, like this one appeared to be. But you see the idea where you have three receivers to one side, running back on the same side, cross and face, tight end back over here, you potential to run the ball back to that side, forcing the defense to defend the field horizontally here, and then also the possibility of the run up the middle. It's a balanced offense, guys. That's my opinion right now. You know, we will all spend more time watching film, trying to evaluate it, learning from each other. You know, obviously, we all will learn from each other. When we haven't seen the offense much, it's going to be fun, if you ask me. I think it'll be fun to not be able to predict plays or not think that we can predict plays. Another thing that I've noticed out of 11 personnel particularly, I rewound back too far there. My apologies. Like I said, it's one continuous video file, so I don't have the ability to flip back one play. So I'm sorry if I'm flipping back too far, but I want to show you that last play from 2019. He really seems to like lining up the tight ends backside against whoever he's getting matched up against. And you got to remember that this team had Landry, OBJ. I understand there's an OBJ dynamic too here, that he had a fantastic season under Todd Monken, and Todd Monken's now our offensive coordinator. Maybe there's a little bit of hidden genius there by the Ravens hiring him. But in any case, getting back to something I've noticed a lot of, likes to line this tight ends up backside in the NFL. Not as much at Georgia the last 2 years, even though it did happen some. Of course, you got a guy like Brock Bowers, but certainly opens up the opportunity to do that with Mark Andrews a lot. Isaiah Likely some. I don't think Isaiah Likely is necessarily a one-on-one guy as a backside X. Mark Andrews has had success doing that, if you ask me. Screen game is smooth. It's dangerous. It definitely hit the Ravens big in this 2019 loss, I think in week 4 at home. And I have a lot of other film. That screen game, though, did stay in Cleveland and continue to be incredibly effective in 2020. So it's entirely possible that Todd Monken wasn't the architect of it. He's been exposed to it. He's been around it, seen the effectiveness of it, and he used the crap out of it at Georgia. Again, I'm not going to show you that film. By the way, that is Marlon Humphrey assaulting Odell Beckham Jr., I believe, in the bottom right portion of the screen. I certainly hope if OBJ is interested in coming to Baltimore, and the Ravens are, which I would hope they should be, that those two guys have moved on since that behavior. All right, next observation I want to talk about, the types of run schemes that you'll see. Generally zone stretch, but equally adept at gap schemes and run into the boundary a lot. And I will continue to mention some of that. Forcing people to defend the entire width of the field. I believe that it is a foundational element of his offense and the way that he thinks about the game. I don't have years of experience of watching Todd Monken offenses, so I'm just going off of the film that I've watched, and I'm allowing myself to make a conclusion based on that could be proven wrong 2 or 3 months from now, with more film exposure. But running into the boundary, in my opinion, it just forces the defense to line up in a manner to account for the possibility. You can see the balls on the left hash here. Account for the possibility of the run into the boundary just by their alignment, which then possibly opens up more room to the field. NFL hashes are tighter, closer together. He attacks to the boundary with the pass often as well. I mentioned that before. I see Rashad Bateman as a guy who has a big year in this offense. I really do. Regardless of whether we pick up another receiver or not, which we certainly will, either in the draft or free agency or someone who's cut. Trick plays, irregular plays, he uses them a lot, along with the RPOs and the screens. At Georgia, reverses, fake pitch, fake reverse screen, fake screen to one side, screen to the other side, and then 3 or 4 plays later, fake screen to one side, fake screen to the other side, throw it up the middle, kind of like 49ers offense stuff. I think he sets people up. I think there's a plan. I don't think he calls one play just to call one play. I think he calls one play to then utilize a complementary play later. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit because that'll be one of the other observations, one of the other core observations that I'm trying to make. But let's get back to the trick plays. Uses them a lot. Players execute them cleanly. 2019, handoff to Nick Chubb. Ball ends up in OBJ's hands. Marlon misses the what would have been a sack. OBJ, fantastic throw. I mean, getting that throw down there looks like 55 yards, maybe 50. But in any case, they execute it across all three teams. I only saw one trick play with Tampa Bay, so I can't say that it was a huge part of their offense, but certainly is something that they used in Cleveland once or twice a game, something they used in Georgia, or the threat of the trick play. And I think it speaks to the way that he teaches the game, because there's some kind of way that he's able to spend, this is RPOs into the boundary now, by the way, spend enough time installing, practicing trick plays to keep them sharp so that when he needs them a game, he can call on them. I would offer to you that the reason why he may have more time and Greg Roman did not is because he's not running the pistol option. He's not spending so much time installing, perfecting, and correcting the pistol option. All right, RPOs into the boundary. We're going to talk about this for a moment. This is all one possession. That previous play, this one here, the L22, and then the end zone. When he finds something that works, running back into the boundary, Chubb's feet were here, tight end into the boundary, RPO look, slant behind it, he stays with it. And I'll show you the completion of this drive, which culminates with, well, there's a 3rd and 4 completion on the same concept. I think when he finds something that works, he'll continue to go to it. I think you got an interception here, by the way. Tight end, run same season 3 weeks later, because I think that Rams game was week 1, and this is week 4 in Baltimore. So sometimes maybe you go to the well too much. But there's some missing plays here between that time, obviously, that I'm not showing you where it might have been successful. But when you get running back, tight end, and a 3rd eligible receiver into the boundary, you're creating real problems for the defense, because when you've got twins up here and 2 good receivers, and again, let's just go off with, we're going to have Bateman, and we're going to have someone else that we draft or we sign in free agency, or that's a cut, or who, whatever, or maybe a second tight end. Maybe he's going to use a lot of 12 personnel. The nickel defender is going to be over here. Has to be. Too much room. He just has to be. So you're basically forcing the defense's hand, and you're almost eliminating certain coverages for them to the boundary. In this case, great play by, I think it's Kennedy, interception, on an RPO into the boundary. Couple of negatives, let's switch it up a little bit. I think I mentioned this in my other video. I saw 4 games where there was a significant amount of either false starts or bad snap count situations at Georgia. Additionally, and I recognize that my data is skewed towards the pass for Georgia, which, I'm not showing you the film for Georgia, as I mentioned before. Overall, at Georgia, I have them 31% run, 69% pass for the plays that I charted, which is 70 plays. So it's a small sample size. I understand that. But I feel like that's a pretty significant skew towards the pass. One of those games was their loss to Alabama in the SEC title game in 2021, though. So they were down consistently for the better part of, I think, 2.5 quarters and throwing the ball more. So that could be one of the reasons why. But I didn't chart every play, to be honest with you. Once games are blowouts, games against teams that aren't super competitive, I don't chart those. I watch them still, but I don't chart them because I feel like some of the data doesn't really apply. But let's get back to the false starts, snap count. It's enough. It's a mild concern for me. I saw it 4 times, and 2 games I saw where the snap count was inconsistent, meaning the ball is either snapped after someone has moved, a false start, or the ball has snapped and 2 or 3 players on the offense, sometimes receivers, tight ends, haven't moved. And that happened enough for me to take note of it, because Georgia's such a high-quality team. 2 consecutive national championships, because they scored so many points under Todd Monken. And I don't think their offensive talent at Georgia, it was great offensive talent, don't get me wrong, but it's not so overwhelmingly great that anyone could succeed with it. Their defense, if you ask me, had the most overwhelming amount of talent in all of college football the last 2 years. I think that's shown by how many guys were drafted, by the performance of their defense. I think Todd Monken did a great job with their offense. If I was going to bring up any negatives, it would be those 4 games where, 2 situations really, where I saw irregular, inconsistent snaps, false starts, and then the balance out of 11 personnel. All right, let's move on to some other observations. Really want to try to keep this at 30, 35 minutes. putting out two pieces of content on the same guy being hired. I'm not sure if that's a good thing, if it's pushing boundaries or what. Okay, extreme positives for me. Caters his calls to his quarterback. Seen Baker Mayfield back there, Fitzpatrick, Jameis Winston, Stetson Bennett. I feel like the calls are catered to the quarterback, and I think that bodes well for Lamar. Whoever else ends up back there, I mean, I'm not here to speculate. I'm going to operate as if it's going to be Lamar Jackson. I think there is a tremendous opportunity for Todd Monken. If he gets to coach Lamar Jackson, I'm going to be honest with you. I think it's a bigger opportunity for Lamar Jackson. I'll touch on that again at the end. I think that Lamar Jackson, if he has anyone advising him who has any long-term awareness or knowledge of Todd Monken and the people he's coached with and how players have performed, this is an opportunity for him to make a shit ton of money. And other position players. But I'll touch on that more again at the end. Caters calls to his quarterback. Baker Mayfield, let's go there first. Under center play action stuff is to his benefit. He really seemed to have liked or preferred three receiver concepts. I don't mean only three receivers out in the route. I mean three guys on the same side of the field. Now, this doesn't apply to Baker Mayfield here. This is just offensive design. So it's a 2nd and 10. I showed this play the other day. It's a pick screen concept. We haven't seen a lot of these in Baltimore. To be real, we have not. My apologies. We haven't seen a lot of these in Baltimore in the last 2 or 3 years where you're getting a guy who's setting a screen or a pick for someone else. All right, so you're going to get a little angled hook, obviously a screen, and then this receiver running up the seam around it. You got Mike Evans down here who's obviously going to get a lot of attention from, I think that's Lattimore. It's a beautiful play. It's a simple play. I don't want to say easy, but for the NFL level, this is not a difficult thing to teach. It's not a difficult thing to execute if you have unselfish guys that are willing to do it. Maybe that's part of the reason why the Ravens weren't good at it the last 2 or 3 years. Maybe it wasn't taught well. Maybe there wasn't enough time to teach it well. Maybe the guys trying to execute it were selfish. I don't know. I don't suspect the last part. I'm just giving you reasons. But you can see, little pick, rub. Inside receiver is going to run around it. Evans going to take his route away from the point of attack, all designed to get the football to one place. Baker Mayfield, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Stetson Bennett, Lamar Jackson, all of those guys capable of executing those things. Baker Mayfield seemed to like, again, three receiver routes, three receiver situations. And he ran a lot of them. He also, I think, attacks man very well. Now, the Ravens under Wink Martindale had a lot of trouble with trips or bunch alignments defending out of man because you get exactly what you see here, a little screen, guy running out into the flat. There's just no way to defend it, whether it's too high, whether it's one high. Whatever the situation is, you can see we're beat easily by the screen rub. Baker Mayfield already throwing the football out here, wide open. I think he attacks man extremely well. I am really interested in the coverages people are going to play if Lamar Jackson is our quarterback because we see a lot of quarters, split field coverages from a too-high alignment, soft corners, soft safeties, eyes in the backfield. They have more depth. They're able to do that. I am really interested in how much Todd Monken throws screens, RPOs, and attacks horizontally. If you're going to give us 5, 6, 7 yards consistently because of your soft coverage and your eyes on Lamar, and you're not going to play what I consider to be a little bit more sound defense, I think Todd Monken could nickel and dime people to death. And then on the opposite side of that coin, when people try to adjust and play man, to me it looks like Monken is really good at attacking that. Maybe I'm going a little extra large there in my observation, but that's just kind of what my eyes are seeing. I don't see a lot of zone read, but he ran it here down in the goal line to end a possession. I think he saves plays for the red zone. He didn't run this play anywhere that I saw with Cleveland or Tampa Bay until he got down inside the 5. He had one situation with Baker Mayfield where it looked like he was asked to read it and then run around the end to the boundary. Short space. I like what I'm seeing, to be honest with you. You can probably tell by the sound of my voice. I think sometimes when he throws to score. Now, I don't mean where we just were, on the field there. I mean, midfield, -40, -45. When he throws to score, it's max pro. And I think that's another thing that I'll bring up here in a moment that is noticeable is he's getting great protection in all three places. They're generally timed to throw the football in all three places. Complementary plays is another extreme um, positive for me, something that I think my eyes see and my brain has noticed. And again, as I mentioned before, saves plays for the red zone. I'll try to give you a little bit of an example of that here. We'll finish this video up in a minute. Gave you a lot of observations, hopefully a lot of data. If anybody wants to see the shared document, I guess I could type it up for Georgia, Cleveland, and Tampa Bay. I don't know, what use it would be of it. It would be to anybody. I think he uses his personnel well. We're not in the red zone. I didn't see this much until we got down near the red zones. Mike Evans, little fade. You got the running back offset under center, so you can tell he's pass pro, and you can tell it's not a run play. Nobody runs the ball with the running back in that alignment. And Mike Evans, a big X. It seems to me Todd Monken really likes using a big X. Yeah, George Pickens with Georgia. I know OBJ's not a big X receiver. When I say he saves plays for the red zone, this is the culmination or near the culmination of the first drive I showed you against the Rams. They had run this concept 3 times on that drive. Tight end, running back into the boundary, RPO look into the boundary to the receiver over there. Now, in this case, he's taken OBJ and Landry and put them to the field. That to me seems to be intentional. Trying to get, some particular matchup down here with the third receiver. That's another thing I noticed. The receivers move around a lot, and I think he's trying to find the matchup that he wants in a particular situation. The RPO, the play action, whatever you want to call it, Chubb moving here, has accomplished its goal. You can see the corner is, again, looking in the backfield the whole time. 3rd and 1, staring in the backfield, completion with 3 yards of separation. I mean, if that isn't exhibit 3000 of staring in the backfield, isn't always the best thing to do, and in fact, in many cases, is not the right thing to do. I don't know what to tell you. On 3rd and 1, if you're comfortable with a corner, giving up a reception with 3 yards of separation on a 3.5-yard route, then we just have a different philosophy of defense. I think Todd Monken can attack split field, quarters, soft coverages extremely well, and I think this is one of the examples of ways he can do it. To the boundary, away from the nickel defender with RPOs, running the ball with a threat to the field. Oh, by the way, he's never had a quarterback like Lamar Jackson. I think it is in Todd Monken's best interest for Lamar Jackson to be here. I think it is this is a weird phrase, career force multiplier for Todd Monken to get to work with Lamar Jackson even for a year. Conversely, and I'm digressing here, I've already kind of talked about the pass pro situation. It generally seems to be pretty good across all 3 locations. This is a huge opportunity for Lamar Jackson. I'm going to be honest with you. I had the chance to speak to him in this moment right now. I think this is the best situation for him. I do. I think this is an offensive coordinator that is balanced, that is going to use whatever needs to be used to attack the defense, that has a good game plan, seems to be able to adjust well at halftime. I see big plays early in quarters, and I see big plays like this one. This is the reason why I had that screenshot there. I see attempts to score early in quarters, early in the second quarter, early in the third, early in the first quarter. Additionally, I see trick plays executed well, smoothly, no fumbles, no dropping the ball. I see trick plays executed in certain situations after the sudden change situations that I call it, early in possessions. I think there's a plan for what he does. I think the plan seems to work. I think his experience at Georgia has only made him better, and that's why I say I think this is a great opportunity for Lamar. I'm a huge Lamar fan. I want to see his career get the recognition it deserves, and right now, from the observations that I have had, from the way that my brain has interpreted the film I've watched, which has been a lot. I think I have 14 hours in this project, guys, so I took it seriously to try to bring as much detail as I could, and there's a cap on how much detail I could bring because he hasn't called plays for the Ravens yet. We don't even know if Lamar will be the quarterback, right? We don't know who some of the other players will be, receiver, whatever. In my opinion, we got a good one. Just based on what I'm seeing, I tried to save some good possessions and some bad ones. At Georgia, the worst game I watched was the SEC title game against Alabama, obviously. And then they blew through and really just ran away from Alabama in the national title game. I think he adapts well. I'm really looking forward to the partnership of those guys if it does occur. And I certainly hope it does. I hope you do too, because I'm not for all kinds of negative people that would make statements about presuming Todd Monken in the offense next year based upon the way other people have called. This is a totally different offensive coordinator There's balance here foundationally. There was none. And with our last offensive coordinator, there just was not. I'll try to make the comparison this way and open eyes that might need to be open. Greg Roman was exceptional at designing certain run concepts and adapting the run concepts throughout the course and the flow of the season. We have to admit that. He was clearly inferior, weaker, far weaker in doing so in the pass game, right? Let's just go there and let's be soft with our judgment of both of those things. This guy, Todd Monken, to me, seems to be able to do what Greg Roman could do in the run game for the run and the pass game. Now, I don't mean to that level. I don't mean that. Well, I don't mean like we're talking about a top 5 pass game coordinator guy in the world for all of football, like Greg Roman is for the run game, or wherever you put him. I hate top 5, top 10 shit anyway. But point is, this is a balanced guy. So as difficult as it might be for some of us, especially during mid-February, to think about Lamar being unsigned, possibly being tagged, and we don't know the status of Rashad Bateman and some of our other guys in terms of health. There is definitely some light at the end of the tunnel, because I think the Ravens had a really smart hire here. There was other guys that, me personally, I would have had higher on my list, but after having sat and studied the film exhaustively this week, I'm going to not watch any more Todd Monken film for at least 2 weeks. I'm pleasantly surprised and encouraged at the route that they went. I think it's a really under the radar smart hire that the rest of the NFL probably knows about, the people who have called plays against him, because I think we got a really balanced offensive coordinator, and it's taken a long time for Ravens fans to get there. We had the one great season clearly with Greg Roman in 2019, and we had another little uptick in 2020, late 2020, when we played a series of 4 or 5 or 6 bad defenses late in the season, got a playoff win. Other than that, though, we haven't seen much evolution that stuck around for a long time. Inconsistent play calling, inconsistent approach, and going away from things that worked. This doesn't appear to be one of those guys, in my opinion. I think it's a tremendous opportunity for the franchise, for our franchise quarterback, Lamar Jackson, and for Todd Monken in terms of his career trajectory 1 year from now, if he gets an opportunity to work with Lamar and things go the way that they could, the way that they should, looking at the film, the way he calls plays, the way he utilizes, spreads the ball around to so many guys. I think the Ravens have a really unique opportunity. Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments section. If you think other people would appreciate this type of in-depth film study of an offense, let me know. I am in the beginning stages of doing one of these types of film studies for Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, but that one's going to be significantly longer in terms of my research, because there is concrete film that I can use and examples I can show, whereas, the film of Monken calling plays at Georgia, I could not. Appreciate you guys' time. If you think other people would enjoy this video, please consider sharing a link on social media to help the video get more reach.